I think Orania is a beautiful place for the people that stay there.
Yeah.
I think it is. I say this and I tell people there are elements of Orania I enjoy.
Let's talk about the money.
The aura.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's called the aura.
Yes.
The most obvious question after that is, do they use South African currency at all?
You're not encouraged to. Orania is open. It even has a hotel. So you can arrange to stay there, right? And so it's not like you can't enter it. You need a passport. No, you can go. And they don't mind you going. But you see, terms and conditions.
Yeah.
If you come to Orania and you have a job, but you don't stay, you're not married and you're female, this is where you would stay. I'm like, oh, okay. So like, okay, and if you are male and single and you work here, but you don't have a family, this is where you would stay. So it's like hostile idea. Like, we celebrate the fact that there was a vow between us and God and we won and therefore remain victorious. But there was also bloodshed. So are you celebrating that too?
The killing of the Zulu nation?
Yeah. So it's a very tricky day, but it's one of those days that is celebrated in Orania. It's a public holiday.
King David Studio Podcast.
But you can understand the misconception because, and you said it, it's the language of the oppressor.
Yeah.
It's the language of a guy that used every trick in the book to make sure that a black man knows his place.
Yeah.
And his place is lower.
Yeah.
And it's a language that when we were growing up, we were forced to learn. We didn't have a choice. If you failed it, you didn't progress to the next grade.
Yes.
It was that kind of language.
Yeah.
And you can't divorce your preconceived, discomfort with the language.
You can't.
And for that, one can understand.
Definitely.
However, there's still a lesson to learn from somebody that worked so hard to preserve it.
Yeah. I think if we for a moment in South Africa go back to understanding language as resources, we might do more with our languages than what we're currently doing. The unfortunate part is because of during apartheid, the indigenous languages were sort of like right.
That it's the oppressor that did that deliberately.
Right.
Yes.
And so when they came on board, it was all the emotion. Yeah, we are people. We deserve to be seen, and our languages and our yes.
Yeah.
But you see, we forgot. Besides being identity markers, they are resources. And we need to use them more as resources to ensure that our identity continues. Instead of just, I said identity, and then we forget to develop them. It's a tricky dichotomy there.
Because it's easy to say Gemopedi, but I don't really use it.
You don't write that?
No. I am a proud Pedi man.
Yeah.
I only use it when I visit home, Kulimpopo.
Yeah.
And
Identity.
that's as far as it goes. But in my lived experience of every day here in Johannesburg, hey man, I throw in English words every corner. I even look for nicer words and bigger English words because they make me look cooler.
Yeah. So I think we can, and we're getting there, where we're getting back to where we understand language as a resource, and that languages evolve, and that languages are fluid. And the moment we can understand that, instead of being at a point where we're fighting, you don't speak the correct version. You don't speak the correct version. But we just like, how do we fuse it so that we keep the resource going, but we also keep the identity going? And I think we need to get there quite quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm talking to a linguist. I can go into a rabbit hole. Self-determination as a concept. There's a paragraph here.
Yes.
Afrikaners consider themselves a nation.
Yes.
Throughout their history, their main wish had been to rule themselves.
Yeah.
A right to self-determine. And you cite Netras and so forth.
Yeah.
The Afrikaner long life stride for self-rule and self-determination came to an abrupt end, an unsuspected halt when F.W. de Klerk failed to protect the Afrikaners from majority rule. Surely this guy...
They don't like that guy.
Was there any reference to him at all in your conversations?
It shocked me. You know, when... As a kid, right, you growing up and one of the few Afrikaner, I was raised, when I was born, one of the few last, except for Woert, one of the few last white Afrikaner leaders whose name kept ringing in every book I read was de Klerk.
Yeah.
So I go to Orania, I'm like, surely, Never. I'm like, oh. Now I'm like, okay, I'm getting the vibe here. Now I'm like, okay, let me read. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's why. Because the clerk at some point was just like, let's stop with this whole self-determination and Volksstaat thing. And this is why, right before the 1994 business, the voting, there was another party that mushroomed. And people had to go back to the table and be like, let's talk. But nah, his bust is not on that hill.
What did he seem like he was the one who was against it, who didn't encourage it, and he was the leader at the time?
He was.
Yeah,
he was. I think it was just a matter of Vervoerd being like, I think this is it. You know, when you come to a point where you realize this thing has run its course, and there might be people at the back who are like, no, one last push, let's get this one last thing in. This Volksstaat business must be secured. And it was really important for the Afrikaners. It still is, right? To be able to not be swallowed. And I use this word loosely, by the majority, because we are the majority. And for them, that is one of the ways they could sort of guarantee it. And and they like declare.
He disrupted
what is going
the
on?
one last push.
Yeah, it's like, you know, and so the guy that came up and rose up was like, I'm telling you now. Right? And so, and even today, there's a party in South Africa, political party, that still pushes self-determination.
Which one is that?
Freedom
Front Plus.
Yeah. Remember, it was first Freedom Front when it came out with the idea right before.
Then there was a plus.
And now there's a plus. But I don't know during the election, if you listen carefully, they still push for it.
Self-determination. Give a loose interpretation of self-determination. So we travel with you in this journey.
When you want to rule yourself with your own people, be around your own people. You don't want government to always be coming in and telling you what to do, and you can't do this and you can't do that. You know, you want to determine who you want to be and how you want to be in that space. That's essentially what it is.
But our constitution still has I don't think it has a loophole.
Yeah,
it's clear that self-determination cannot happen within the parameters of our constitution.
Yeah.
However, you can still live on your own, which is what Orania is doing.
Yeah.
So then there's a difference between self-determination and what Orania is doing. Or is there?
Orania can exist because of self-determination.
Okay.
Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. So, but the tricky thing is, remember, if I self-determine, you can't tell me how to determine because it's called self-determination.
True.
This is important. So it's not like I can be like, I'm self-determining, but I would like your input on
on my self-determination.
No. I have a right to be in the country because I'm a citizen and it belongs to everybody who's here and loves here. So I love here, but I don't want to love with everybody. I bought a piece of land and this is what I want to do. And because of the laws of the country, that land is now private property. And we all know right of admission is reserved.
Yeah.
Right? Might not do illegal things on the piece of land, but you can't tell me how to self-determine on my land. Yeah. So it's a tricky thing.
In your research, did you find anywhere where it speaks of the ANC's role in promising a Volksstaat?
Oh my goodness. I think there is. I remember the one that always tickles me is the fact that the now president said that, well, then he was part of the advisors, I'm assuming. He said, if they want a Volksstaat, there's Robben Island. Right? So this thing has been coming. It has been in conversations. And so it's never as if people did not know this was important to the Afrikaners. So Nelson Mandela knew about it. He said, not for as long as he lives, it's not going to happen. And Cyril Ramaphosa was like, there's Robben Island. So a couple of prominent people have commented on this idea, right? So yeah, people have commented. People have always known this thing. It's been a burning sensation for a long time.
And I guess then based on that, the existence of Orania shouldn't surprise anyone.
No.
Or anything similar to it.
No. But because it is presented, and this is why it's so important to have information. It's presented as, hey, these white people just bought a land and they just settled. And now they want to bring apartheid back. No. they knew during apartheid that they need to find a place for themselves because they wanted to be by themselves, right? And so they figured out right before apartheid finishes, let's finish all of these things off. And now, because of the loss of this country, they can stay on their own private land. They can buy land. I mean, if you buy land in South Africa, you own it. And there you have it. And so, boom. So I think people have the wrong information and therefore we get angry about it. But if we just read it from the reality that everybody that stays here belongs here, they have a right to self-determine. This is how they chose to self-determine. And that is basically it.
There's some who would say Orania is nostalgic.
Yeah.
About apartheid.
Yeah.
Whether right or wrong, there's some who would say Orania apologizes. It's an apology. It's a form of apology. Not apologizing, really. It's a form of acceptance that apartheid wasn't such a bad thing.
Yeah.
Are those people wrong to make that assumption? And because at the heart of apartheid is whites only.
Yeah.
And blacks excluded. That is at the heart of it.
Yeah.
And that is the first thing that hits you about Orania.
Yeah.
The very thing that was at the heart of apartheid.
Whites only.
Exactly. Where it was a beach for white people only. It was a toilet for white people only, and so forth and so forth. Some government buildings still have those signs, by the way, without realizing. Fortunately, those signs mean nothing. And then, fast forward 30 years later to now, there's actually a place like that.
Where there's whites only.
Exactly. So then, are those people wrong to think that Orania is nostalgic about apartheid and everything that came with it?
I think apartheid worked for the Afrikaners. For whatever amount of time it worked, right? They were able to put certain things into place. I always say, whoever conceptualized, and of course people say it's verwoerd, whoever conceptualized apartheid, the psychological impact, that person was a brilliant person. Because to date, like you say, rain stopped 30 years ago.
I'm still wet.
But I'm still wet.
Yeah.
And so I think if you think apartheid essentially, if I understand it to be, was a solution to the poor Afrikaner problem that was happening at a specific point in time. So apartheid was sort of, let's get everybody to enjoy, right? Ours, for us to enjoy and not the rest to enjoy, right? And so if you talk about whether they are nostalgic of apartheid, if apartheid benefited them, of course you'll be nostalgic. I mean, that's human. If something benefited me and somebody stops it, of course I would want it back.
True.
But I think in the understanding that they were benefiting, they've now created their own place where they can still benefit.
Yeah.
So nostalgia or not, I think it's about reaping the benefits of being in charge. Because that is essentially what is happening, ruling yourself, being in charge of yourself, reaping those benefits, which is really what happened during apartheid.
So you'd want to have it again. You'd want to have that experience again because it worked.
It did. And perhaps this is why it's troublesome to figure out the clear dichotomy, because he's the person that... But I don't think everybody in Orania or most people in Orania would want it in the form that it was. I don't think, like I said, we find racists everywhere. But I think people are practical people. I don't think anybody believes that we could go back to apartheid and it be the way it was. And the rest of us just be like, oh, okay, this is interesting. No.
Yeah.
And I think they are very aware of it. I remember sitting with a participant and she said to me, because we were talking about the Afrikaner history, and she said to me, we don't deny our history. And the fact that parts of our history was bad. But we just want our history to be told sort of in a balanced manner. Don't let everything about the Afrikaner be bad, 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 bad. And I think that's another element that is happening in Orania, where if you look at the history books, right, at some point we were being taught this. And then this conversation came in about apartheid and how it was bad. And boom, hey, all the black leaders. And they're like, but we also remember that time it was their history. And saying that people's history was completely bad, surely it touches them somewhere.
Of course.
So there's this conversation about, can you also tell the good parts about our history, right? And it also then recently made me realize we also don't get to tell the good parts about how individual white people played a part in our lives. My grandmother was a domestic worker. At some point, when I was in Kimberley with her, that's what she used to bring home for me to eat from a white person's house. But we can't have that conversation because we have villainized the history and villainized the individual impact that white people have had, be it in our lives or generally in the country. So what she's saying is that, look, it wasn't all that good, but it also wasn't all that bad.
Yeah.
And for me...
Be careful not to sound like you are glorifying.
No, never.
And I say that
Yeah, sure.
deliberately because I'm playing devil's advocate.
Of course.
Someone that says, what is she saying?
What is she talking
That
about?
was all bad.
Nothing is ever all bad. And of course, people are like, yeah, Nasioko apartheid. She wouldn't know how it felt. I'm still wet.
The rain has stopped 30 years ago.
I walk into spaces and people are like, Doctor Who. Where's? Oh, okay. And people call me automatically by my name. And I'm like, okay. Odd. So it's not that I'm glorifying apartheid, but I also am fully aware, and cancel culture is a thing, but I'm also aware that was elements of, many of us have that story where we like, but this white person that does good thing for me. And it's not the glorification of apartheid, it's realizing that we need to tell a balanced history.
And are you saying that that's what the people of Orania are advocating for?
That's probably the type of history they teach their children. Because she was alluding to the telling of histories and how history works. And the fact that they can sit and tell whoever they teach in their private schools that, look, this is what we did. It didn't work out. We heard 1, 2, 3, and 4. Hey, and then, and this is why the country sort of looks the way it might look, right?
It's us there.
It's us there. Do you see that? It's definitely us. And this is why perhaps if you go out into the world, you might not be well received because especially now you come from Orania, it's an extra bonus, just like, right? But I think all of us are advocating for balanced telling of history. And I hope one day we'll get there where we can tell good and bad and we can be okay with good and bad.
They call it Orania a place of hope.
Yes, on the board. Yes.
Is it written in Afrikaans?
Yeah. There's very few things in Orania that are written in English, if at all. Yes.
What are they saying? What hope are they referring to?
I think Orania is a beautiful place for the people that stay there.
Yeah.
I think it is. I say this and I tell people there are elements of Orania I enjoy. I mean, I'm female. I don't drive after dark. I don't think that would be the same situation in Orania. I've seen children play in the street without being shot, without being run over, without having to be fed things that kills them. Right?
That new problem of ours. Yeah.
So when I read that board where they have like Orania, this place of hope, we do this and it's safe to be here. And I was like, I can understand it. I can see it. I can feel it. But again, like people like, yeah, but you don't qualify to stay there. I might not. But I can imagine how there's good elements of Orania I would want in South Africa.
On page 31.
Yes.
A friend of mine who says I missed the opportunity of being a pastor. Because I make references to the verse.
Okay.
It says it's a manifesto.
Yes.
The manifesto is written in Afrikaans.
Yes.
I'll read it and say it in English.
Yes.
Orania's message of hope.
Yes.
A good municipal service delivery. A safe environment, especially for our children and the elderly.
Yeah.
Excellent teaching and training. Sustainable economic development and job creation. A visionary and vibrant community. Do those things come across?
They do. They do. I mean, they have although Orania is, in terms of our South Africa has demarcated our municipalities, it forms part of Thembelihle local municipality. And they were caught back and forth. Point is, Orania has its own sort of municipality.
Okay.
And they do their own sort of service deliveries. That is what it's alluding to. They clean up their own things. And it is a safe environment. And they do have jobs and people work there. People are forever busy with something in that place. The place is clean. The place is well signposted, which is a lot more than I can say for a couple of places that I know in South Africa. So it does. It does. Unfortunately, whether we like to admit it or not, it's working. It's working. I know people
I like the tone of your voice changed. Like you're trying to tell us, wake up, this thing is working.
It's working.
Wow.
Maybe we just need to find out why it works.
And leave everything out of it.
Like, why does it work? Maybe that's what we just need to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah.
Sorry to shock you.
No. I'm not shocked, because there's also a phrase that comes across in the book that talks about sustainable rural development.
Yeah.
And I remember when I read that, I said, if it's a model, an economic model, surely it can be replicated and take the good from that. Because am I wrong to say that Orania is a rural space?
It is.
Yes.
It has a big pecan farms. So it's a rural space. It's surrounded by a river. Hey, you miss it. You blink, you miss it.
True.
It's that small.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So it is a rural space. It was placed on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a rural space. But there are things that just work, right?
Yeah.
And my question has always just been, even though it pains us, because it pains us, and it rightfully so, let's find out. Why is it working this much?
Mm-hmm.
Why is the town growing?
There are new people every day.
Why is the town growing?
Yeah.
What do you do? And this is not to say that, again, people like white people are always doing things right. No. We also need to get past that point where instead of acknowledging what people do, we like, which skin color first? It's them. Of course, it's expected from these ones. So I think there's a couple of things that are working, and it is a rural space. It's in the heart of the Northern Cape somewhere. I blink past it and you'll probably miss it.
So yeah, it can be replicated.
It can. There's a couple of things that can be replicated. I think the one thing about Orania that I think we can start asking ourselves questions about, and of course we're much bigger and they're much smaller. But where did our sense of just simple humanity go to? That's it. When they say they are particular about the kids and the elders.
And the elders, yeah.
Our elders. Leave the kids, because those ones care. We all know what we're doing to them currently. Our elders. We don't value them. We lock them up in homes, for whatever sort of home, your home or somebody else's home where you pay them. They have lost. Elders are walking archives. These people have history.
Institutional memory.
What do? We hurt them. In different ways, right? We don't protect them. We don't even make them feel like they, when my grandmother was alive, she knew she had value. You could see it. But now we skip the grannies, go ask Google. And after asking Google, ask the pharmacist if something is probably wrong with the child or something. And then the grannies, ultimately we come back like, Mama. And we're like, and she's like,
Gray net die.
Yeah.
And give him.
My grandmother used aloe for everything. Everything.
Yeah.
Your stomach hurts, aloe water. Aloe water for everything. To date, if I have a bruise or something, aloe. But we don't do that anymore. And I include myself, because it's not like I'm excluding myself. And I think that's one of the things we can ask. What value do they place on elders that we don't? And how do we correct it?
They are in the elders are in their manifesto.
Yes. It's intentionally put there that we need the elders to know they have a place in society.
Let's talk about some of the small, nuances that are found in Orania.
Yes.
The color orange.
Yes.
What's up with that?
You know what? The color orange seems, when things seem innocent, but they're not. And so I ask my first time, I'm like, so why is the place called Orania? And they're like, no, competition between the workers that were there at that time for the construction, right? So they named the place Orania. I'm like,
well, I don't get the answer there.
I'm like, it's too coincidental. The Orange River passes here.
Yeah, I thought that could be the reason.
Yeah. And also, implicated is a color in this name. Can't be. So I sat down. I'm like, let's see. Netherlands, orange. And I was like, okay.
But is that your own conclusion?
No, it's not a conclusion. It's let's be. You see, sometimes in research you get the answer from a participant, and then you go figure out the nuances. And so in the nuances, my argument is put forward. My conclusion then that it's not as easy as saying, oh, it was named by. There's way too much depth associated with the word orange, which is inherent.
So
in
it's
Orania.
Not just
it can't.
fleeting thing.
No,
it's deep
it
inside.
Be.
Yeah.
And this is why we need to hear and be like, oh, let me just. I think there's more.
Here's another thing. Street names.
Yes.
And things like that.
Yes.
Are not, when we find a Winnie Mandela Road and a Nelson Mandela Drive, there's none of that. And well, not even Afrikaans names. What is that? Why is that?
I was like, so I'm speaking to somebody that now works at a municipality, and I'm asking, tell me about naming. And she's like, oh yeah, everything is named in Afrikaans. If it's not gemstones, I think they have gemstones in town. Okay. And another area they have birds, the names of birds, and flowers, I think somewhere else. I'm like, oh, okay, what is that? She's like, because we do not create gods out of people. I'm like, it's one of those moments in an interview where you're just like, keep looking forward because, in your head, a couple of things are going off, but you're like, focus, keep looking forward. Like,
and that's a biblical reference. That's a biblical reference, yes.
But you also now know that when you think about the South African situation, you're like,
we work hard to give people street names.
We are currently, right now, we are going back and forth about the changing of a place name. So they say they just don't make gods out of people. There's one God.
Something to be taught from that.
I was like, I wish we could get there too. It would be much cheaper. It would be less political if we just called everything flowers or whatever, and
I lived in a complex once, and the street names were after wines.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. Thinking, geez, these people are fancy.
Look.
Yeah.
Chenin Blanc.
I lived on Le Bonnet. I don't even know what type of wine that is, but that's where I lived.
I recently saw street names internationally. I don't know what I was looking for. This is the street names. Thus, that. I'm like, no, people got tired. Thus, that street. Those are the names. I was like, well, and that.
In Pretoria, Nelma PS in Pretoria, they have soccer teams. It's less complicated.
Soccer
unless
teams,
if you're not a supporter of that team and you live in that street.
Yeah, I was about to say it might get tricky there. But yeah, they just don't. And that was it. She was like, we don't create gods out of people. I was like, okay.
Another thing that stood out for me was the currency. And we made reference to it slightly in the beginning. Let's talk about the money.
The aura.
Yes, it's called the aura.
Yes.
From Orania, I imagine.
Yes.
That they use it.
They do.
They trade with this currency.
They do. In Orania, they do.
The most obvious question after that is, do they use South African currency at all?
You're not encouraged to. But of course, you cannot use Orania in Boksburg.
No, of course.
The aura. You can't use the aura.
The minute you leave.
Yeah. But they do. And I recently read they're trying, I think, to develop cryptocurrency or something. But there is a movement towards, again, this conversation about, independence and being sovereign.
But you can't.
You can't. But they have it. At least, in my head, it's like, if part of them probably thinks, we can't use it outside, but at least we have it. So it could be conceived a step in the right direction on their terms, right? Not justifying anything. But yeah, so they have it and you can use it.
They have a currency.
Yes.
You take this currency.
Yes.
Yeah. No one else outside the next 200 meters has you seen this thing. And you're buying a bottle of water with it.
Yeah.
And then you give it to this person and they give you a bottle of water.
Yeah.
And it's a currency that no one else knows in South Africa.
Yeah.
And that's what they do.
That's what they do.
Are you telling me somebody gets petrol
Hey.
with an aura?
Yeah.
I would feel like I'm robbing the petrol attendant.
It's like,
but anyway.
what's the exchange rate here? I think above everything else is the need to feel like we are building something of our own. I think that's important. I think that's what it's linked to. Of course, to you and me, we're like, but you can buy with this thing outside. But I don't think it's baby steps. Let's put it in a...
That's why I said earlier, it's a slow attempt to keep pushing the boundary.
Yeah, just like...
And see how far it goes. If they say nothing, we'll keep going.
Yeah, so, again, what are you going to say? You said I'm a self-determined. Now I'm self-determining. And I'm not using this in the rest of the country because you won't accept it. But yeah, this is part of our identity, right? So it's that sort of baby steps that this is who we are.
Do they see themselves directly or indirectly as South Africans? Or are they Oranians?
I think they are more Oranians than they are South Africans. Simply because it literally could be a world of their own.
True.
Right? And so,
Wakanda.
yeah. So if you come to this side, you like,
Yeah.
And you're on that side, like, okay.
I get it.
Sense. Yeah, I get it. So I think they consider themselves more Oranians than they do South Africans. Although they are South Africans.
And I ask this question because being a South African has a lot of implications. Some of them is paying tax.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
SARS. You have a tax number and you have a tax bracket and all of that. You know, Budi directive. Do they live in that world or do they try not to?
Of course they try not to, but they do live in that world. We all pay tax.
They have a South African ID.
Yeah.
Is there an Oranian ID of sorts?
No, none that I have heard of. I saw South African ID. Again, if you would get an Oranian ID, what would be on it? It can't be an ID number.
I'm trying to understand.
No, I get you.
Yes.
I get the question. But no, they have South African IDs. I saw one. I saw South African ID. It might not be one of those things that you're going to public tell the world. Mara, push comes to shove. In which country do you stay? On those forms. Orania is not part of the options.
Yeah.
South Africa. And then they're like, okay, great. South African ID then. What do you put in?
Or dual citizenship.
Well, that's interesting. But yeah. So yeah.
Wow, man. Yeah, because, you know, when you go through the book, I guess one thing that you do in this book is give us it's a window into a world that some people and some of us may never ever go to. I must tell you, after reading the book, I want to go as a tourist. Do they accept tourists? Or is it like, we are just here to check it out?
They do. Orania is open. It even has a hotel. So you can arrange to stay there, right? And so it's not like you can't enter it. You need a passport. No, you can go. And they don't mind you going. But you see, terms and conditions apply. Right? And this is important to understand.
Like?
I remember on that board where they like, if you look suspicious or you see something suspicious or suspicious person, I'm like, I look suspicious, but okay.
What is suspicious?
Yeah, you know, but they have there'll be no criminal activity. The welcome board stipulates that this is private property. This is what's happening here. This is not what is happening here. So I think like any other private property, like your house.
True.
Terms and conditions apply.
Of course. You can come in.
Yeah.
If I invite you.
Yeah, sometimes you can't even come in because Bobby stops you at the gate.
That's it. Yeah.
Bobby's like,
actually, you can't just come in.
Hey, where are you going? See, Bobby is a term and condition. So yeah.
There's something that comes out in the book. You're saying everything is written in Afrikaans except for one thing.
Yes.
Those instructions.
Definitely. They are bilingual.
It's the only
thing. They need
thing.
you to know that I told you.
In English.
In English. Side by side.
Does it come across as a warning of sorts?
It is. I call it an I told you so sign. You know those signs where it's warning signs, but they're in a language that majority of the people don't understand? And just in case you say, but I didn't understand, they're like, ow.
We wrote it.
We wrote it. You're like, but I don't understand. You're like, we wrote it.
We wrote it in the language you understand.
So it's that is one of the only sign I've seen that's in English, and I think it's for a reason. Is so that when you break it, they can be like, look, we told you. And how many people go around reading signage? Very few. And so they're like, no, we told you. And so it is a warning. It's a warning. It's a very stern warning. It's just cute. Because there's a little, what I call the mascot of Orania is right at the top of that sign. But it is a warning.
Is there a police station or a police system or, well, inverted commas, security system?
There isn't a police station. There isn't a police station. No, there is. I asked, what happens if another person does you wrong? They were like, we mediated. So it's a very, David, you did something to me. David, you robbed me. You said I must pay 10 rand and I'll pay 20. Can we talk? And then I think there's some mediation that happens and we're all good in the hood. We resolve it and we're fine. And that's why I think Orania has such minimal crime, right? Because sort of everybody knows to toe the line. Because if you don't toe the line, you're gone.
The phrase toe the line sounds draconian, sounds very forceful.
Yeah.
Do you sense that forcefulness about the law, like back in the days of Mangope, where you knew that you don't scar trial?
Yeah. You see, I went to an African school. So I'm familiar with what it feels like when the line is toed.
However, but you were black in an African school.
Yeah. Okay.
Already you came with the, you better toe the line.
Yeah.
But these are all white people, Afrikaners, who we assume they get along.
Yes.
However, in getting along, I'll step on your toe once in a while.
Of course.
I'm only human.
Yeah.
So is there a heaviness about the toe the line?
Heaviness in terms of intentionality. Because remember, the world is watching us.
We better get our act
right. And we are saying and want to prove that we are better than. We want to show that we have a different system in place, different morals in place. So towing the line is essential.
Yeah.
It's critical.
It's probably high on the list. Yeah.
So, for example, I know this thesis I read, this person was talking about how some of the community members were not happy with young people that kept being disruptive at this place where they used to drink alcohol and stuff. And it was addressed. Like, no, toe the line. The same way how single men in Orania do not stay with single women. Toe the line.
Wait a minute. Come back to that point.
They don't. So I'm driving around in Orania and I'm taking pictures. And so the lady says to me, so that is where if you come to Orania and you have a job, but you don't stay, you're not married and you're female, this is where you would stay. I'm like, okay. So like, okay, and if you are male and single and you work here, but you don't have a family, this is where you would stay. So it's like hostile idea. Like,
okay.
I'm like, okay.
What is the reason?
Cohabitation before marriage.
Okay.
Certain encounters before marriage are frowned upon. And so we keep you apart. Right? And so females stay there and then the males stay there and then we keep it going.
Are they, because apartheid, and I'll use the reference because, people in Orania will say they're not apartheid. Apartheid was based on Christian values and principles.
Yeah.
As you said earlier, pick the parts of the Bible you like and use them to justify your actions.
Yeah.
Do you get a sense of the Christian values in their approach to things?
Not a lot. It didn't come out a lot. I was actually shocked, considering it was at the heart of how we justified God to be the chosen people of God.
That's
right?
it. That was
and I was
notion.
like, but it's not coming out. It's not. The one person spoke about that they consider a family to be mother, father, children, and that is how God intended it. The father leads and whatever. But religion did not come out a lot. It just didn't. It just didn't come out as strongly as I thought it would. There was there's always a complaint that the young people are doing their own things and veering off. But
they're young. They're young.
Yeah.
They make life interesting.
So, but I didn't find that the religion is still at the core of what needs to happen. Yeah.
Do you know, your chapter 2 talks also about, Rainbow Nation issues.
Yes.
It talks about how it's easy to laugh at us. And we spoke about this earlier.
Yeah.
It's easy to laugh at the grey nation and the grey nation that South Africans have become. From your observation, are we the grey nation that we speak of, or you make reference to, or the book makes reference to? Because some of the points are citations from other people who've said that about South Africa.
Yeah. So when he spoke about a grey nation, I was just like, oh, hold on. It sounds cute when you say we are a rainbow nation, we get along, all the colors merged together, you are beautiful, melting pot. And then you're like, okay, but what are we melting into?
To grey.
Yeah. And you're like, oh. Because if everybody has a right to follow a certain linguistic, ethnic group, whatever, they have a right to express it. The problem is that if we were to remember that we are so different, we might just divert and never come back to each other to find common ground.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But in the finding of common ground is also, I'm South African. That's citizenship. We want the nitty-gritty of your identity. No, I'm South African. I'm proud to be South African. Let's not think of ethnic groups, linguistic groups. I am South African, right? Nothing wrong with that. The problem is that it sort of robs us of that smaller nyana opportunities to say, I speak this language and I'm from this ethnic group. And this is who I proudly am, right? And so you find that when I thought about it, I was like, phew, it's heavy. Because the Rainbow Nation, the concept sort of keeps us together.
Yeah.
And now you're like, actually, they're trying to make us just one monotone. I am South African. I love all the people in the country. I'm not racist. I don't see color, which is not a bad thing. But I think the problem with Orania is that it robs people of the opportunity to preserve their languages and to preserve their identities. And I think that is the problem they have with being this monotone, I'm South African. Then they're like, I'm South African, but I'm also
South African, but very important, highlight, bold, I'm Afrikaner, while I'm South African.
And I'm going to preserve this and this and this and this. And if that is not at the forefront of what we consider a rainbow nation, then I don't want to be part of it.
Yeah.
And that's the argument. They're like, no, we don't want to be part of a rainbow. It's not a rainbow nation. Because all the colors are not recognized because they fuse into one at the end. You look at a rainbow, you don't go like, oh, look, that's a different color. No, you're like, oh, it's a rainbow.
One rainbow.
Yeah, it's one rainbow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because it comes across quite a bit. It's actually a lengthy discussion on the grayness of South Africa and its ability not to see itself properly and losing things.
But also it's the commodification of being a rainbow nation. And I think that's what, if I'm starting to understand it properly, we only want to be a rainbow nation when it suits us.
Yeah.
When we're trying to kill dragons and trying to don't fight. Please don't fight. Don't.
Do you think we can live, well, we are, I don't know, depending on how you see it.
Yeah.
We can live harmoniously in the celebration of our individual identities.
Yeah.
As in, we can have Orania.
Yeah.
And next to it, we have Bopedi.
Yeah.
Next to it, we have, Pleke ya Basotho.
Yeah.
And we all self-determine. And I say, because we were divided deliberately.
Yes.
By someone that said, and you go to every township, you find Komapeding, Komatswaneng, and so forth. So that was deliberate.
Yeah.
And I guess our forefathers who said, let's bring this thing together. This is a mess.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think, from observing Orania and its self-determination, ambitions, we can actually live harmoniously together? This is a big question.
It is a big question. I think we need to be honest about, when they say that the TRC was rushed and it just, when you take a bandage and you like, just admit so we can move. I think there are there are deep-seated issues and conversations we need to have as South Africans. Openly, frank, call a spade before we can move on. You see this post in apartheid.
There you go.
There's a lot of conversations. A simple thing. There's conversation about Pride Day and Heritage Day.
Yeah.
We keep running from it and no, it's what? And it's because you don't have a heritage and you don't have a culture. And it's also this thing in how we think about languages, because in South Africa, unfortunately, when somebody says, I speak a language, we think, oh, so it automatically means that you are from that ethnic group. So we have linked language to ethnicity and ultimately identity. Right?
Yes, everything.
Now, here's the problem. That is not how that system actually works.
Okay.
But we keep hurting each other because in the so doing of it, we keep dividing each other more than we are coming together. So, for example, we have 12 official languages. What do people hear when we say that? We are 12 different types
of ethnic groups.
And that was never the case. So if you read literature, there's a conversation about how the Xhosa tribe and the Zulu tribe got to speak two different languages. It's because the missionaries that were in charge of them were fighting. And so it's like, I take my group, you take your group. But we don't know that history. So in order for us to unite and find a way forward, we need to have deep conversations, not only about knowledge, but about what do you think when you see another person? What do you feel? When I say Kimujwan, what does that, in your head, do you think, different than me? Oh, why Itiba? And what does that say about us as a country who's trying to be part of
a rainbow nation? Yeah, and we have ticked the box of 12 languages.
Yes.
We were 11 for a long, long time.
Yeah, now we are 12.
And there are some who are saying, I'm not represented. And many who are saying, I'm not represented in all that stuff that you're doing.
Yep.
And I'm unhappy about it. Yep. And I want to be represented. I know Balobedu who are saying our language is very different to Sepedi, but we are grouped together. And you find a lot of those, the coins and all of that. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And so I guess the story is not done because we decided to stop talking.
Yeah. To stop talking and having, I don't know, were we rushing to write policies or generally are we just rushing because we don't want to deal with wounds? Just like, and then you walk around and people are like, it's hate speech. I mean, my father used to call me kafir.
What?
Yes. My late father.
Your dad?
My late father used to walk. He used to walk into the house. I promise you. Like kafirki. He called us kafirki.
Like even my heart rate.
Right? As a sign of endearment. I was like,
how is that a sign of endearment?
I promise you. Kafirki. Every time. And I'm like,
no.
How? But you see, right? To him, it's an endearment. And we have sort of, and I'm like, you see, these are the conversations we need to have where we speak many things and we mean many things, but nobody really knows what's going on. So you'll be shocked. I was called kafirki.
Is it, I guess, it's Americans and nigger.
Yeah,
you know?
There's also a Lorato, there's a Lorato who can say that word.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
But to each other.
Definitely. Yeah.
You just move on.
Nigga, please. Yeah. And you just move on.
Very tricky. It gets my heart rate racing. That much I can tell you. Did you sense prosperity in Orania?
I did. I sense prosperity, growth, a sense of belonging, stability. I did.
Those are big words that most nations aspire to achieve.
I did. I sensed an unapologetic group of people. And I was like, no, we know who we are. We know what we stand for. This is where we are.
Wow.
And we're not about to apologize for it. We are not our ancestors. So whatever they did, surely it was bad, and we agree. But we stand here now, unapologetically Afrikaner, on this piece of land, and this is who we are.
Jeez, man. And that's why I said after reading your book, I was left feeling like there's nothing wrong with Orania.
I don't think I don't think the things we want to be wrong with Orania are wrong with Orania.
Yeah.
Nah. The things we want to be wrong, like they're racist, yes, that's every person down the road, every now and then. But if we look deeper, we might learn. We might find out and be like, what is going on?
There's something there.
There's something there.
Let's talk about if there's anything wrong with Orania that I will find is the Verwoerd Monument.
Ah, yes.
That is my wrong.
Yeah.
Because of who Verwoerd is in history.
Yeah.
He's credited as the architect of
Yeah.
apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
The man who enforced it and said it's a policy of self-determination, of good neighborliness.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Where I build a high wall and if I don't see you, I don't greet you.
Yeah.
We get along.
You mind yours, I mind mine.
We're good.
But we're all right.
When you saw that, what was your experience of the monument? Or rather the museum?
I think I was shocked that it exists. Right? So in my 2 visits, the first one, I saw and I didn't really entertain it. I drove past it and it was closed anyway. It doesn't stay forever open, I think.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And the second time, by luck, as we are passing by, finishing off sort of our second data collection, that he's like, oh, the museum is open. They have a group. Don't you want to come? I'm like, whoa, what does that mean? Right? And I say in the book, I feel like my black ancestors were like,
do you really want to go?
How are you even considering this? And before I could even fathom what is going on, right? She's like, so you can have a holistic understanding of this research site. And I'm like, well, good argument. I walk in there and we can't take pictures, which is a bummer. And I'm like, okay. And then sit there and you listen again. This is one of the times when you need to forget that you're black. Because the group is completely white and looks like some of them are international guests.
Okay.
And I'm standing there and I'm at the back, just chilling and listening, and I'm bobbing my head. I'm like, you're just going to pop your head. You are recording here with so there's a recorder on and you're just going to like pinpoint the most important moments. And then we come to the part where there's this love letter that was written by black people for Verwoerd. I was just like, whoa, hold on. Whoa, I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And this is the only thing we can take a picture of in the museum, by the way. The rest you can't take pictures of. I found that suspicious. I was like, it can't be. Why only one thing? I mean, his bloody clothes are there. The clothes he got assassinated in. They're right there. And all of the supposed other gifts that he was. I was like, I'm taking a picture of this thing. I really want to know. So the visit to the museum was difficult. It was difficult on a psychological level because what are you doing? Everything you've heard about Verwoerd, architect of apartheid, Verwoerd this, Verwoerd that,
Yeah.
Never heard anything good about the guy, from black people at least. This is why I'm like, no, can't be. So I'm taking this picture and I'm like, I need to find out who are these people? And the more I go through it, and the book got published, and I speak to historians, and I'm like, guys, we need to find out about this letter. I'm not okay with this letter.
It's written by the people of Kutlano or something. Yes.
And they refer to Verwoerd's wife as the mother of the nation.
It's a letter after he passed on.
Yes.
And it's a letter of condolences of sorts.
And expressing their undying love for him that had passed and love for her. And I'm like, wait. And I'm like,
it's interesting. It's the only thing you're allowed to take a picture of.
I'm like,
how much more did you find out about this letter?
Not enough. Not enough. I think what is in the book now is surface level. Because then I found a friend of mine who's a historian, is like, it's possible. Because she has another link to that family. And she's like, it's possible.
Yeah.
So I can't wait. I can't wait to find out more. So I want to investigate this letter. I really want to find out. And also, again, the stories we tell and the stories we don't tell.
That's it.
Right? The same conversation about how we say everything about apartheid was bad and white people were bad. If this letter is an actual letter that black people wrote, what does that say about black people's relationship with
this man?
Verwoerd?
Imagine if Verwoerd had a black family.
Well,
that's me complicating the story.
So the stories we tell and the ones we don't. The ones that we conveniently villainize and the ones we don't.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to finding out about this love letter to Verwoerd, as I call it. But yeah.
What feeling did you get about the museum? Because the museums, by their nature, are created to preserve a memory for future generations. And this is a memory that is painful to most South Africans.
Yeah.
Not blacks, most South Africans. And surely there must have been some feeling you had about this experience.
Some people wonder why it exists. And before I put everything together, I wondered too. I was like, why would you take this risk? Everybody knows that very few people like Verwoerd. Why would you even bother? In fact, you know that Verwoerd is so villainized that they took off his statue from the Monument Hill and placed it now at the museum because people were not okay with it being there and people had very strong feelings, so they removed it. And as I was reading through, I was like, it makes sense. Verwoerd has a very camouflaged, revered position in Orania. It's very camouflaged. It's yes, we have a museum of him, and yes, you can't take pictures, and we do this because he was our leader, and but then you go around and the Klingreus, the mascot, the small giant, the conceptualization of that mascot, what I call a mascot, came into being after a lady was inspired after a Verwoerd speech.
Okay.
Right? And then created the Klingreus based on what Verwoerd had said, that it's time to roll up our sleeves and to work and whatever. So it's not like we can divorce the Klingreus from Verwoerd. No.
It's one story.
Yes.
It's a part of.
I call the Klingreus the sanitized version.
And this is what, and if I get you correctly, is what appears in the images of Orania. Am I correct?
Yes.
That
the small boy.
Yes.
Yeah. The Klingreus, they call him the Klingreus, the small giant.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in everywhere. He's in every piece of branding that has to do with Orania. And you ask yourself then,
who is this?
You listen to the story and you're like, oh, this looks cute. Orania.
Yeah, that's the first impression.
And then you're like, no, actually not. It's actually just a camouflaged coexistence, and we just continue to exist in this space, but not as who you are, because who you are has been villainized. We'll just put you, somewhere in the Klingreus. We'll name a business after a farm that you own. So, yeah.
And I'm fishing for a deep sense inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've answered it, but I'm really looking for a clear statement that says, is there celebration of Verwoerd in Orania? And what he may have stood for, or as the father of the nation, so to speak.
It's not a loud celebration. It's, like I said, it's camouflaged. Because the same way that there are some of our leaders whom we don't outright celebrate, but we know that we celebrate them here in the corners because some of us really understood what that person stood for, even though it's not a popular opinion.
But we got him. Or we get him.
Yeah, if push comes to shove, we will defend. So this other lady, I was interviewing, a very random interview with not even related to the book. I was in Kimberley at a school that used to be called Hendrik Verwoerd. And so we walk through and she's like, oh, his bus used to be there. I'm like, oh, where did the bus go? She's like, yes. I'm like, Orania. She's like,
So I get a sense there's a considered but yet clear effort to collect the memories of Verwoerd and house them.
Not just him. Every Afrikaner leader whom people were in agreement with, or Orania people are in agreement with, that they were great Afrikaner leaders.
Which other name comes up? Because they are at the monument.
Yeah. So on the hill, there's Kruger. Kruger's there. Verwoerd used to be there.
And then removed.
And replaced with the Klingrius.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah. I forget who else, but there's a couple of notable people there. Couple of male busts, very specific male busts that are there, where people are like, okay, these ones, they understood what we stood for.
Do you understand that with everything that you see and learn and understand and try to understand about why Orania exists?
Yeah.
And then there's this thing, like, I got you, but you're failing me here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because particularly if you're black and you're looking at this,
like,
I was getting you.
But
how, like, this thing, you can't have a Hitler monument.
Yeah, it's like, it's odd, like, fix this. Yeah, there was a lot of those moments where I'm like, yeah, I get you. And I'm just like, how? And then, right? I'm like, I get you. And then I find out about the history of Klingrius, and I'm like,
now I don't get you anymore.
Now I don't get you anymore. And then I go around and I understand self-determination, right? But I'm like, yeah, but now I don't get it when you are making it sound as if the rest of South Africa is just nonsense. Because we have good elements too, right? So there's elements that I'm like, and I'm like, right? It was constantly like, and I'm like,
yeah.
Right? And it was that sort of that had to play out in the book. Where I'm like, I get it, but
you miss me here.
But you see, I don't know what's going on. So for example, Afrikaner employment equity. I'm like, let's just call a spade, guys. Let's not now try to make it.
What is the spade?
It's like the same way, many, I guess, companies are busy criticizing the government for instituting black
affirmative action. And
I'm like, but you
have it.
You too, right?
Eish.
So it's a delicate dance. It was a delicate dance, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
I can only imagine it's such a tricky research to do, because you cannot take off the hat that you're black.
No.
In the middle of this research.
No, unfortunately not.
So at every given moment, you remind yourself that,
hey,
I don't get this.
Like, isn't this the part we are supposed to be angry about? Oh yeah, be angry. It's definitely the part. Oh, why are you angry? Yeah. So I think it's a constant journey of self-reflection and asking, but okay, fine, you are black and you are angry, or it offends you. But let's quickly find out something else about it that could add to it, right? That would make sense. That's why I'm so interested in the Verwoerd letter. As a black person, I'm just like, But as a researcher, when I hear other research going, but it could be, I'm like, hey,
maybe it is.
There's a piece of history we're not telling. That there was black people that liked Verwoerd, revered Verwoerd.
Called Verwoerd's wife the mother of the nation.
Imagine. I'm like, okay. Yes.
I have questions. There's the Cook sister, whatever statue thing, monument.
Yes.
What is that? Because Cook sister is not even African.
No, the Cook sister is a delicacy. It's that donut thing that is
round,
twisted,
yes.
And then it's like very syrupy and it's very sweet. So it's not from the Afrikaner. I think it came from Asia or something, right? And so here we have this Cook sister monument. Oh, and again, I thought, monument for women. When I heard the narrative, I was like,
what is the narrative? Because I could tell that
I was like,
you were battling with it and you kept on bringing it closer to the Mbogoto.
Which is another flop, but okay.
Yes, the union building, I think, yes. Because I saw that you were wrestling with the concept.
Yeah, because there's very few monuments in like that on a woman, right, in South Africa. And almost none that do a good job, right? And so I thought, Cook sister monument. It's interesting. it's aesthetically, it's pleasing. You're like, how did these people get this right? And so and then I heard the story of how it came about. And as you read into the history of the reality that men always get bronze busts and the statues and whatever made out of bronze, and that has implications for the identity and for the stature we attach to that man and that statue. And here you come, and I don't even know what type of plastic, sort of plastic, like the
material
Cook sister is made out of. But initially they wanted bronze. The woman wanted bronze. And then the Cook sister monument was not even the female's ideas. It was a man that said, hey, why don't we do a Cook sister monument? It leaves so many unanswered questions.
Who is it and what is it celebrating? Because monuments by their nature is,
it celebrates women, the Afrikaner woman, right? And every time there was a need to jump in and help in the fight, they big Cook sisters, and there was functions and the fundraising, right? So it celebrates the contribution
of the women.
Afrikaner woman, right? I was just like, I don't see it. I see it, it's cute. But when we dig deep and we take that and all the other female monuments and the fact that it's next to the community hall or swimming pool where the others are on top of a hill.
Revered.
Nah, I was like, no.
Earlier, you spoke about the hierarchy.
Yes.
Without really probably realizing of an Afrikaner setup.
Yeah.
It's the mother, father, kids, and where the man is the leader.
Yes.
We are now living in a different world.
We are.
Where I know if I didn't, now I know for sure that there's nothing different about you.
Yeah.
You are as equal, if not stronger than me in many, many ways.
Yeah.
Do you still find that narrative exists in Orania of the man is the leader?
Yeah. Not only is the man the leader, the family looks a particular way, right? And people are assigned specific duties. So I talk about how the banknote is actually a way of loving that is suggested. It's not just banknotes. So the first banknote, I think it's the 10 ora, has a baby on it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And there's a whole narrative about the baby and what it represents. And the last one is an old couple that is a heterosexual couple.
So that's the big... isn't the big note.
Yeah, the last one.
Yeah.
But it's a story. It's almost like the story of your life. Somewhere you get married and there's a young couple, heterosexual couple dancing, right? Right? And then somewhere there's education on the note, but it's a very linear way of understanding
how life works.
How your life is going to work, right?
It's on page 68.
So it's
the
not,
notes. There.
It's not
notes.
Yeah, it's not just it's sort of, you must remember in every way that there is, again, we told the line here. There's how we are going to live here. This is what you are going to do here, right? And so, yes, it's a very, that's Orania for you.
It's 10 rands, 20 rands, 50 rands, aura.
Yes, the aura.
10 aura, 20 aura, 50 aura, 100 aura, and 200 aura.
Yeah.
And you're right. The 200 aura is an old couple.
Mm-hmm.
The 100 aura is a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Who is seemingly he's doing well because it has a bag that looks like a
money.
Bag of coins or money or gold. And then you have the 50 rands or 50 aura, which is a dancing couple. And you are right. The 10 rands, there's a 20 rands. If you remember, what is on the 20 rands?
In the middle.
Yeah, there.
This one speaks about education.
Ah.
If you see the girl on the left, it's a girl, those old school bags we used to have, where you sit behind it. So it's education, the importance of education and business.
Okay.
And then you have the dancing couple. On the 50 aura to the right is the Dal monument, which is in
Paarl. There we go.
Afrikaans. And I've been to that monument. Hey, yeah. So this is the narrative. And church. Right
yes,
there.
church on the 200, on the old couple.
And the old couple need to sort of find their way of giving back into society. So they're very intentional about the elderly and their role in society.
What type of texture of the money? Is it?
I didn't get to touch it.
Oh, really?
I didn't. That is the best I could do through a plate. I think that was the newly printed ones.
Okay,
That's
because
the
they look
best,
like a
no.
bag of sorts.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Wow. I wondered because it looks like it was made with the same paper as this book.
Well, but yeah, so it... somebody asked, does the money actually exist? I said, yes, the money exists.
It does.
Definitely exists. It's printed and all. In circulation and all.
Money is a legal tender.
It is.
On its own, it has no value.
Yeah.
Its value is derived from its country.
Yeah.
The country saying, we have all agreed collectively that we will give this thing
for something else.
200 rands value.
Yeah.
We as a country, we will protect its value.
Yes.
Because we are a prosperous, or strong, stable, and so forth and so forth economy. And then we will allow you all to use it as an agreement amongst us as a group that it has value. We all agree on its value collectively that this is 200 rands.
Yeah, yeah.
And with 200 rands, it can buy so much.
Yeah.
It's a legal tender.
Yeah.
That's why you watch movies, end of the world movies, where some guy's breaking in the bank, is robbing the bank, and he says, what are you going to do with the money? Because it has no value today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe in the future, but right now
now
it has no value.
Yeah.
So we have agreed collectively of the value of the currency.
Yeah.
When it comes to Orania, what do they say about the value of their money? Is there an agreement amongst them that this is how much this is worth? And how much is it? Is it of the same equal value as a rand? Or is it stronger? Because they're more stable than we are.
At some point, we will probably answer those things if they were a currency that was, like, when I say registered, I mean that has an exchange value, right?
True.
Right? But like I said to you, I think above everything, it's the reality that we can.
We can do it.
And we did. That means there's something to build on. Because if by some stroke of, not even luck, whatever, Orania is given the go-ahead, be the country you want to be. They have a currency in place.
They don't have to start from scratch.
Right? So it's almost like bigger picture. Right? So the value is not necessarily, but you can use this thing. It's like the day we can.
We're ready.
We're ready. And I think that is a lot of what is happening in Orania. It's almost like when we can and when we want to and when it happens, we won't have to start from scratch because we'll be a strong nation already.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's like when you plan in advance, whether when it happens or not is irrelevant. But the town is growing. So there must be something that they are banking on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing that stands out is that they have their own calendar and holidays.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Which ones stand out for you? There's one, actually, to help you answer the question. 16 December.
Oh, Lord.
The day of vow.
Yeah.
What is that?
Hey, that one. So essentially, we have Reconciliation Day on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the day of the vow. So the vow was made when the Afrikaners were going to fight, I think, with the Zulu nation, right? And so they were like, Lord, if you help us, win these ones over them. Don't know, they'll vow. But there was a vow, there was an agreement that they and God came into.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then they won that war. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, the vow and them are here. So it's the vow is somewhere in the book, but that day is sort of commemorated. Again, it's a very politically charged day because they celebrated for their victory and they vow with God. And on the other hand, South Africa's like, we're trying to reconcile a country.
Yeah.
Come on. Right? But no reconciliation.
We see it differently.
They're like, no, we celebrate the fact that there was a vow between us and God and we won and therefore remain victorious. But there was also bloodshed. So are you celebrating that too?
The killing of the Zulu nation?
Yeah. So it's a very tricky day, but it's one of those days that is celebrated in Orania. It's a public holiday.
There are others
Yes.
that do not exist. Majuba, I was surprised by that.
Me too. The public holidays in Orania, the ones, I think, is there Founders Day?
Yes.
I think that's Founders Day.
6 April is Founders Day.
That's the day Jan van Riebeeck came.
Hey.
And I'm like, why?
Look at that.
Why?
You can't ignore the politics in the days.
You can't. I'm just like, Jan van Riebeeck still, but then again, they only here because he came.
6th April. You want to celebrate Jan van Riebeeck's Day or Founders Day?
Yes, you can
on
go
the
to
6th of
Orania.
April, go to Orania. There's a Language Day on the 14th of August.
Afrikaans.
Yeah.
Very specific. Afrikaans.
Why don't they just call it Afrikaans Day?
I don't know. Because that's the only language they do celebrate. I was just like, okay, Language Day, but they're very intentional about that public holiday. It's I was interviewing somebody, I'll never forget. The person said, you see, there's a difference between how we celebrate public holidays, yeah. We take them seriously. I was like, and us. They're like, you
outside the gates of Orania. You do your thing.
Come Freedom Day, what do you do?
Yeah.
Don't even know. You could ask people on Freedom Day, which public holiday is it? They'd be like, isn't it June 16? Right? So there's also that element of whatever is on their calendar. Oh, they take mighty seriously.
And the dates don't coincide with South African holidays at all.
No.
Except for 1 or 2, Christmas, it's celebrated on the same day. Even the 26th Family Day, when we call it something else, we call it a Day of Goodwill.
Yeah.
So there's so many holidays that do not exist in South Africa's calendar, yet exist in Orania.
I think they still have Ascension Day.
Do they? Yes, they do. Ascension Day.
We took it out.
Also have another day called Heroes Day.
Yes. I think they celebrate there the Afrikaner heroes. There's history to it, but it's mainly sort of the Afrikaner heroes that are there. But to my shock, they still have Ascension Day.
Yeah.
And I remember Ascension Day. I remember leaving early from school. I remember not going to school at all.
Okay.
And now it's just out of the system. Again, it speaks to that Christian background.
And that's why I find 1 or 2 conflicting factors about it.
Yeah.
There's not a strong Christian feel. However, there's a celebration of Christianity.
Yeah.
There's not a strong apartheid feel, but there's a celebration of apartheid heroes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's I find a slight contradiction in terms.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
All the time.
If it works for you, I guess. If it works for you, why not?
If it works when you have the land for it.
In doing this,
yes.
What are your conclusions?
My conclusion is the short in the book.
I know. It's
shocking.
A paragraph.
Yeah.
It's the tiniest part of everything. It carries the least part of...
It's like...
As I remarked in passing in my introduction, Orania's existence is maintained by 2 types of fears. The swart gevaar and the wet gevaar. What is that? What are those?
So, swart gevaar is this idea during apartheid, then when you see black people, oh my God, they are criminals, they are what. But there's also the element of wet gevaar. And this is the element that our black political parties play on a lot. That are like, don't vote for those people. Remember what those people did to you during apartheid, even if you don't remember, but okay, just remember, these people,
They'll do the same thing again.
So it's the 2.
Yeah.
One plays this, one plays that. We want to keep Orania white because swart gevaar and black people and this, but we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that. And then it's like, look, you see what they're doing. They don't even want you there. Right? And I'm just in the middle thinking, do you even know anything about it to be afraid anyway?
That's what it is.
And so the conclusion that I leave people with is just make up your own mind. Read the book, and then you sit there and you're like, how? I didn't know, or I knew, or I thought I knew. And you make up your own mind, because above everything else, we need to become a country that honestly has a less emotional response to Oranya's existence. And just have an informed one. Because emotions, I'm angry. Yeah, they're still going to be there. But if you have information and you're like, okay, so apparently these people exist because, and they have a right to do. Why don't I have the same rights? Or why am I struggling to enforce the same rights?
Do you continue or conclude
Yes.
the boogeyman character of, let me rephrase, how do you conclude in relation to the boogeyman character of Orania in relation to the new South Africa? And note, I called it new, not post-apartheid.
I think the new South Africa has a lot of scary things. We came out as a country not knowing whether we'll make it, right? And so there was a couple of things about our history we like, and a couple of things where we like, ish. And a couple of things we hide, and a couple of things we celebrate. But one of the scariest things to date is that supposedly there's a white place somewhere in this democratic country where, as a black person, you could die if you go there. The fear, right? And so when I say it's post-apartheid boogeyman, it's the thing that we are holding there lingering like a carrot, right? And it's like Lisilo vibes. You know this thing could potentially be fake, but you are scared.
It scares you.
And you don't want to go ask, is Lisilo real? And you don't want to stop watching because you might miss out. So you keep with the sensationalization of things, right? And so when I speak of it as a boogeyman, I'm like, what is the story here? Like, I remember as a child, I used to be scared of sleeping alone and I would need to be convinced of many other things. There's no hoja, there's no whatever. And later on as an adult, I could rationalize. If I locked this door, if I did this, in my head, things cannot enter. Right? And if I looked under the bed and found no monster,
then I'm good.
Then I'm fine. But what happens is that because we are in a tricky place as a country, especially when it comes to black and white relations, right? Orania has always been but we can pull that card out when we like it, like the race card. But we can also pull it out now and say, but look. But nobody has ever just said, what's the information?
Do you understand it?
Don't use it to scare people. Don't use it to manipulate people. Give them the information. Tell them why it exists.
Yeah.
Why is nobody telling us why it exists? And so, up until that time, I'm hoping that after people read this book, most people will be like, oh, it was part of the negotiations. It's not scary, it's just private land. And we move on. So that next time when somebody comes, election time, if you vote for those ones, you see that place, then the Northern Cape, you're like, oh no.
The whole country will be
like you're that. Like, oh no, sorry. I know it's not what you say it is.
Do you get a sense that there'll be more of these type of places? Whether those places are Africans or not?
Physically, it might not be. But I think physically because we might not have the land and people might not afford it. But I think more and more people are looking for ways that they can govern themselves, that they can be in charge of their own futures because looking back these 30 years, we're just like, we're not sure.
Okay.
So I think more and more people are moving towards a place where they're like, we need to be less independent on a group of people.
Got you.
And move towards a place where we can be like, oh, I can do this for myself. And I think within that lies the danger about Orania. The fact that they did it. Yes, of course, they have the money. Yes, they have the land. But they still had to fight court battles and they won. And
now there's case law. You can refer to Orania versus...
Precedents have been set.
Exactly.
So we can be like, but...
Because it takes one.
Just one.
To encourage others.
Just one. And that's why the place in the Eastern Cape could go to Orania and be like, we also want to learn how to be less independent from government. Which things do we need in place in order to do this? Because maybe for them, the government is not coming through fast enough or whatever the case is. Or maybe they've realized that at some point or the other, the government might not always have the resources to pull us all through. So
I'm proud of you, man.
Thank you.
I really am. I now want to go to Orania.
We'll go together.
I really do like it.
We'll go together.
Can I sleep at the hotel?
You can.
Hmm.
You can.
I want to go to Orania now.
You can.
And I know exactly where it is. Like I drove past it. I remember I stopped
Yes.
and zoomed, the,
Yeah.
so I can, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is. There's Orania.
Yep.
There's the river crossing past it.
Blink and it could be gone.
Wow, man.
But it's an interesting place.
I am really, really proud of you.
Thank
you. Was it difficult to get this published? Because these things are not easy. I see is it UWC Press?
Yes, it's UWC Press.
Yes. I think there's another story there.
Yeah, no, that's a whole different story. Publishing, yeah. But it's good when things come together and people believe in your vision. But publishing is not the most easiest things to do. Hence, so many people self-publish.
Yes.
Yeah, which has its own downside. But it was worth the fight. It was worth the investment. And I'm grateful that UWC and Africa Sun Media were like, okay.
It's worth it.
We can do this together. Even when one reviewer was like, no, they were like, we'll find another reviewer.
Would you do a bigger project like this for, say, a PhD?
No. I think one PhD is enough.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I'm also a fan of, you see, that book is when people are like, when books are really big, and I'm like, do people finish such big books? And they're like, oh, this book is really small. I'm like, because I wanted it to be exactly that small.
Yeah.
I wanted you to get the information, have it be impactful, and you get it. And the next book I'm planning to write will be a totally different place in the Northern Cape, another place that, unfortunately, like Orania, we need to start talking about.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Bloemfontein.
Similarities?
The Khoi and the San, or the San, no, not the Khoi. The San people stay there. They are not South African.
Mm.
And there's a whole political mushmash going on there, but the people are suffering. And so it's almost the opposite. Right?
Of the prosperity.
Yeah, of the prosperity in
Orania,
right? You have people in Bloemfontein who are not South African, and there's politics involved in service delivery because they're exactly not that. And they form part of the defense force that fought against or fought for the apartheid government.
My gosh.
So that's the next project. Complete opposite.
I wish you well. Why don't we have Dr. Lorato?
They asked. They were like, wow, how do you want this name to appear?
Jay.
And I was like,
do you know how hard it is to get a PhD?
I know.
So why don't you make us all celebrate you? On the thumbnail, we're going to write Dr. Lorato Mokwena. Whether you like it or not.
I don't know. I was like, Lorato is just fine. I think sometimes when the putting the PhD as a double-edged sword, you put it and people like you think they can't achieve it. Sometimes you put it then and people like, I want to be that. But also sometimes it just creates unnecessary distance. Yeah,
well, we are used to it in South Africa because we can also buy it, you can fake it.
Well,
so we are used to it. There's a lot we can do with a PhD. You can get one from a fake university. You can get an honorary one. So come on, it comes in different shades. I think those that actually worked for it should celebrate it. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm proud of this.
Thank you.
I found
so
it was
much
interesting reading for me, I must admit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you enjoyed the reading, and thank you for having me.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
There she is. Dr. Lorato Mokwena, everybody. Lorato. Get it right. Thank you so much for checking this out. This is a cool one. Is it available for sale?
It is.
Where?
In all bookstores, and they can easily just find me if they want a copy of it.
There you go.
King David Studio Podcast.